What if every single aspect of your life, I mean, your biggest successes, your most crushing struggles, the actual physical health of your body, what if all of that is being actively created by the silent thoughts you just, allow to echo in your head?
It's a pretty staggering question to ask yourself.
Right. I mean, we walk around all day assuming the world is just sort of happening to us. We treat life like a movie we're watching where we react to the plot twists and complain about the villains, hoping for a happy ending.
Yeah, exactly.
But this perspective totally flips the camera.
Yeah.
It suggests that we are actually the ones writing the script, directing the actors, and building the sets, thought by thought.
It really forces a complete paradigm shift in how we view reality, because moving from being a passive observer to, well, the active architect of your own life, that's a realization that carries massive weight.
Oh, for sure. It's huge.
On one hand, it's the ultimate liberation, right? You are no longer at the mercy of random chance. But on the other hand, it strips away literally every excuse you've ever leaned on.
Yeah, it really does.
It demands this level of radical personal responsibility that, honestly, most people spend their entire lives actively avoiding.
And that is the beautiful yet kind of terrifying core of today's deep dive. We are unpacking James Allen's monumental work, As a Man Thinketh.
Such an incredible piece of work.
It really is. We've gathered comprehensive audiobook transcripts and modern analyses to really get under the hood of this philosophy. We want to examine how an invisible, fleeting thought crystallizes into a solid habit.
And how that habit then literally builds the tangible reality you wake up in every single morning.
Exactly. So we're going to map out a practical blueprint for becoming the master gardener of your own reality.
The foundational image Allen uses to set this all up is this concept of the mind as a master weaver.
A weaver, right?
Yeah, he suggests that the human mind is constantly at a loom, weaving two distinct garments that we wear. So the first is the inner garment of character, which is the fundamental truth of who we are when nobody else is watching.
And the second?
The second is the outer garment of circumstance. So our environment, our financial status, our relationships, our physical surroundings.
It's so interesting because we spend so much time obsessing over that outer garment, don't we?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, we try to buy a better one. We complain that our current one doesn't fit. We look at the garments other people are wearing and feel super envious. But we completely ignore the fact that our own hands are on the loom.
We really do. We weave these garments in ignorance and pain, just entirely unaware of the machinery we're operating.
Right, using threads of fear, threads of doubt, threads of resentment. And then we wonder why we're producing this exact itchy, uncomfortable outer garment we're stuck wearing.
And the turning point comes with awareness. The moment you realize you are operating the loom, you can stop blindly feeding it those threads of anxiety and pessimism.
You can actually choose differently.
Exactly. You can deliberately choose to weave with threads of enlightenment, purpose, and joy. But to change the output of the loom, you have to really understand the mechanical relationship between thought and character.
Which brings us to the central aphorism of his entire philosophy, right? As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he.
That's the one. And that phrase suggests character is not just some genetic lottery ticket.
Which is how we usually treat it, like eye color or height.
Yeah.
We think, well, she was just born driven, or, he is just naturally a pessimistic person.
Right, but Allen argues that character is the exact mathematical sum of all our thoughts. There is no luck involved whatsoever.
He brings in this botanical metaphor that I think clarifies it beautifully.
Yeah, the seed and the blossom.
Exactly. He says action is merely the blossom of thought, while joy and suffering are its fruits.
Right, so an action is never just an isolated event.
No, it's the visible bloom of a seed that was planted in the soil of your mind long before the action ever actually took place.
And this fundamentally challenges the way we view human behavior, especially when it comes to actions we label as spontaneous.
Oh, I love this part, because we really like to believe that spontaneous acts, a sudden outburst of anger or a split-second decision to help someone, are totally disconnected from our true character.
We say things like, oh, I don't know what came over me, or that wasn't me, I just snapped.
Yeah, exactly. But Allen's philosophy rejects that entirely, right?
Completely. He says there is a rigid law of cause and effect in the hidden realm of thought.
It makes me think of a computer algorithm. If you feed a machine learning model biased, messy, low-quality data for years, it just processes all of that information quietly in the background.
Just churning away.
Yeah. And then when you finally ask it a question, the answer it spits out in a split second might seem spontaneous, but it's actually the inevitable calculation of all that corrupted data.
That's a perfect analogy.
Or Imagine a blank canvas.
Mm.
If you consistently load your palette with muddy, dark, depressing colors and start throwing them at the canvas, you can't step back and blame the canvas for being ugly.
You loaded the brush.
Exactly. But applying this to human behavior, are we really saying that an instantaneous reaction in traffic or, impulsively giving money to a charity is actually a premeditated act?
Well, not premeditated in the sense that you sat down with a pen and paper and planned to yell at a stranger in traffic on a Tuesday at 4 p.m.
Right. You didn't schedule it.
Exactly. But the psychological conditions for that outburst were meticulously cultivated. The spontaneous action is simply the moment the dam breaks.
Oh, wow. The dam breaks.
Yeah. If your internal monologue is just a constant stream of defensiveness, if you're always mentally rehearsing arguments, focusing on how the world is unfair, harboring selfish thoughts, you are weakening the structural integrity of that dam.
So when a minor inconvenience happens, like someone cutting you off, you don't even deliberate.
You don't. The action just flows naturally through the pathways you have spent months or years digging.
The grooves are already there. The water just follows the path of least resistance.
And exactly the opposite is true as well. If a person quietly entertains thoughts of generosity, abundance, and empathy, they are digging different grooves.
So when a stranger asks for help, their hand reaches into their pocket without a second of hesitation.
Right, and it feels spontaneous to anyone watching, but it is the blossom of a seed that has been watered daily by their internal monologue.
The text provides a highly relatable example of this process, right? The person who dreams of starting a business.
Yes, the business example is great. The initial idea, the dream itself, is the seed.
But anyone who has ever tried to build something knows that a seed just tossed onto the sidewalk doesn't grow. It requires an active, continuous thought process.
You have to learn the market, draft a plan, overcome your internal hurdles, and actually prepare.
Right, and all of those hidden mental actions eventually culminate in the visible blossom of launching the company. The launch looks like the starting line to the rest of the world, but it's actually the fruit of a really long internal harvest.
And the tragic inverse of that scenario is just as common.
What does that look like?
Well, a different person has the exact same seed of an idea, but instead of watering it with preparation and focus, they water it with anxiety.
Oh, man. They overthink the risks.
Exactly. They entertain the creeping vine of doubt. They imagine all the ways it could fail, and that seed of doubt blossoms into paralysis and inaction.
And when they never start the business, they'll just point to external circumstances.
Always. They'll blame the economy, interest rates, bad timing. But the mechanical truth is that the culprit was the thought pattern they allowed to dominate their mind.
Which pulls us right into the transition from internal character to external circumstances.
Yeah.
If the character is the plant growing from the seed of thought, the circumstance is the physical environment surrounding that plant.
And this is where Alan introduces the most demanding metaphor of his entire philosophy. The mind is a garden.
The garden metaphor. It's powerful because it implies, unavoidable, continuous labor. A garden doesn't just pause.
No, it doesn't take a day off. Whether it's intelligently cultivated by a master gardener or completely abandoned and neglected, it will bring forth growth. That is a fundamental law of nature.
You cannot have an empty mind.
Right. If you don't intentionally plant useful seeds, the wind will just carry useless weed seeds into the soil, and they will take root, multiply, and eventually overrun the whole space.
It's like if you leave a patch of dirt in your backyard completely alone for a year. You don't return to find a manicured lawn and blooming roses.
You definitely do not.
You find a chaotic tangle of dandelions, crabgrass, and thorns. It defaults to chaos without intention. And this leads us to what is arguably the most difficult pill to swallow in all of Alan's work.
Yes, the concept of what we actually attract.
Right, the idea that people do not attract what they want, but what they are.
It is a bitter pill because it systematically dismantles the victim mentality.
I mean, human beings are very good at wanting things. We want robust health, we want financial freedom, deeply fulfilling relationships.
But Alan argues that wanting is just a superficial, surface-level desire. The universe does not respond to your passing whims or your verbal complaints.
So what does it respond to?
It responds to your core character, which is the aggregate of your thoughts. The circumstances you find yourself in are a perfect, unbroken mirror of your internal state.
He goes as far as to say that people end up in extreme situations like poverty or even prison, not by the tyranny of fate or a streak of terrible luck, but by the slow, compounding pathway of groveling thoughts and base desires.
That is a heavy claim.
It is. He's essentially saying a criminal doesn't just stumble into a life of crime because of a single bad break.
The text is uncompromising on this point. It argues that a pure-minded person does not fall into crime simply due to the stress of an external force.
Right.
The criminal thought, the compromise of integrity, the entitlement, the disregard for others, that was already being secretly fostered in the dark corners of their mind long before the crime ever occurred.
So the external pressure or the sudden temptation was simply the hour of opportunity.
Exactly. It didn't create the corruption. It merely revealed the gathered internal power of that corruption. Circumstance doesn't make the person. It reveals them to themselves.
That brings up a massive philosophical question about society at large.
It really does.
Because if circumstances are just reflections of our thoughts, how do we view systemic issues? The sources dive into a very specific, challenging observation Alan makes regarding the dynamic between the oppressor and the oppressed.
Yes, and this is a concept we need to look at strictly through the lens of his philosophy of the mind, independent of modern political framing.
Right, keeping it entirely within his framework. How does he justify the existence of oppression if everything is internally generated?
Well, Alan approaches this dynamic purely from the standpoint of internal locus of control and mental sovereignty. He argues that both the oppressor and the slave are, in his words, cooperators in ignorance.
Cooperators in ignorance, okay.
Yeah, from a purely external viewpoint, it appears they're afflicting each other. One holds the power, the other suffers under it.
Sure, that's what it looks like physically.
But structurally, within the invisible realm of thought, Alan posits that they are actually afflicting themselves.
So they are both imprisoned by their own mental architecture.
Correct. The oppressor is trapped by thoughts of greed, dominance, and a fundamental misunderstanding of what constitutes real power.
Which ruins them internally.
Exactly. This mental state rots their character from the inside out. They are enslaved to their own base desires for control.
And what about the oppressed in this framework?
The oppressed, in Alan's view, may be trapped by thoughts of inherent powerlessness, fear, or a subconscious submission to the external environment.
So neither is truly free.
Right. Alan states that perfect compassion condemns neither, but understands the profound suffering inherent in both mental states. His ultimate thesis here is that the truly free person is the one who has conquered their own internal weaknesses and discarded selfish thoughts entirely.
They just step out of the dynamic altogether.
Yes, that person belongs to neither category. Their freedom is internal, rendering them impervious to the psychological damage of oppression.
He's advocating for a radical, absolute internal sovereignty.
Completely.
The idea that true freedom and true imprisonment happen exclusively in the mind. You can't always control the physical world, but you can absolutely refuse to let it dictate your internal landscape.
It's a really powerful stance.
It reminds me of a kaleidoscope. You look through the tube of a kaleidoscope, and there are just a few colored glass beads sitting at the bottom.
Right.
But as you twist the tube, the mirrors inside reflect those few beads into an infinite number of exact, complex, beautiful geometric patterns. Our thoughts are the beads. The universe is the kaleidoscope.
I love that visual.
As our thoughts constantly shift, organize, and reorganize, the universe continuously shifts its mirrors to present exact physical circumstances that perfectly match the pattern of our minds.
Yes.
If your thoughts are chaotic, dark, and fragmented, the kaleidoscope shows a chaotic, dark reality. If you change the internal beads to bright, orderly, purposeful thoughts, the reality outside inevitably reflects an orderly, bright pattern.
The continuous dynamic nature of that process is what makes it so compelling. The universe is constantly adjusting to the picture you're holding in your mind.
And this mechanism doesn't stop at external events or financial situations either, does it?
Not at all. It applies intimately and perhaps most drastically to the physical vessel we inhabit. We have to examine how the mind dictates the biological health of the body.
The sources are really blunt about this physical toll. We've established that thoughts shape our environment, but Alan argues that the body is literally the servant of the mind.
Yes, sickly thoughts equal a sickly body.
The text explicitly states that thoughts of fear have been known to kill a man as speedily as a bullet, and that continuous anxiety quickly demoralizes the whole body, leaving it open to disease.
When you first read that, it sounds like poetic exaggeration, maybe a little dramatic.
It totally does. It reads like 19th century poetry.
But modern biological science has actually caught up to Allen's philosophy in a profound way. The source material brings in the contemporary study of psychoneuroimmunology, or PNI.
Psychoneuroimmunology. That's a mouthful.
It is, but it's fascinating. This is the hard science of how psychological processes, our fleeting thoughts and lingering emotions, interact directly with the nervous and immune systems of the human body.
So there's a literal biological link.
Exactly. When you harbor negative thoughts, fear, or anxiety, your brain doesn't know the difference between a real physical threat and an imagined one.
Wow, okay.
It interprets the anxious thought as an active, immediate danger.
So it flips the switch on the sympathetic nervous system.
Yeah.
You go straight into fight or flight.
Yes, and when that happens, your body is flooded with a cocktail of stress hormones, primarily adrenaline and cortisol.
Now, from an evolutionary standpoint, those chemicals are incredibly useful for short bursts, right?
Right. If a tiger jumps out of the bushes, you need cortisol to spike your blood sugar for immediate energy and adrenaline to increase your heart rate so you can run.
But I'm guessing the problem is when the tiger is just an email.
Exactly. When those systems are chronically activated by incessant worry, anger about an email, or pessimism about the future, that toxic wash of stress hormones never recedes.
It just sits there in your system.
Yeah, and over time, chronic cortisol exposure leads to high blood pressure, weakened immune systems, and chronic systemic inflammation. Your body is essentially breaking its own tissues down because your mind is constantly telling it that it's under attack.
It's literally biological warfare against yourself.
It really is.
And on the flip side, thoughts of joy, gratitude, and peace stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest state.
Right.
When you're in that state, your body lowers its heart rate, actively strengthens immune function, and promotes cellular healing and regeneration. You are quite literally healing yourself with a thought.
The sources offer a fascinating, highly visual contrast to illustrate this physical molding.
Oh, the two different faces, right?
Yeah. They describe a 96-year-old woman who has the bright, innocent, radiant face of a young girl. And they contrast her with a middle-aged man whose face is deeply drawn into tight, inharmonious contours.
And the argument is that the lines and wrinkles on their faces aren't merely the result of chronological age or sun exposure.
Exactly. They are physically etched into the skin by the habitual thoughts they've harbored.
That's wild.
The woman's face is smoothed and relaxed by a lifetime of cheerful, sympathetic thoughts. The man's face is carved by tension, passion, discontent, and bitterness.
You literally wear your mind on your face.
Yeah.
The internal monologue becomes an external map.
It's very literal.
But this brings up a highly practical question. Let's say someone is listening to this and they realize their health is failing. So they decide they're going to fix their physical body.
Okay.
They completely overhaul their diet. They go strictly vegan. They drink expensive green juice every morning. They hire a personal trainer. But internally, they remain a miserable, resentful, angry person. They're furious at traffic. They hate their coworkers. They're jealous of their neighbors. Is the green juice actually doing anything for them?
According to this philosophy, they're fighting a deeply losing battle.
Really?
Yeah. The source material asserts that a change of diet will not fundamentally help someone who refuses to change their thoughts.
Wow.
If you pour premium, high-octane fuel into an engine that is rusted out and full of sludge, the output is still going to be toxic. The engine itself is compromised.
That makes perfect sense.
Allen argues that clean thoughts naturally lead to clean habits. If a person truly purifies their mind, if they cultivate serenity and purpose, they will naturally desire clean, healthy food.
They won't have to force themselves through a miserable diet using willpower alone. The body naturally follows the mind's inclination toward purity and health.
Exactly.
Trying to fix the body without fixing the mind is like trying to paint over a rotting wall. You might look okay for a day, but the rot is just going to bubble up through the fresh paint.
The underlying structure has to be sound.
So if idle, drifting, negative thoughts cause all this physical decay and circumstantial chaos, how do we stop the drifting? How do we take the wheel?
The sources point to one specific, absolute antidote. We must link our thought to a central purpose.
Purpose.
Yeah. Aimlessness is categorized not just as a weakness, but as an active vice.
A vice, wow.
To avoid the destruction of drifting, a person must conceive of a legitimate purpose and make it the absolute centralizing point of their thoughts.
And what kind of purpose are we talking about here?
It could be anything, really. This purpose may be a deeply spiritual calling, or it might be a specific worldly ambition in business or art. The nature of the purpose matters less than the fact that it exists.
Just having that anchor.
Right. This singular focus becomes the royal road to self-control.
Think of a ship without a rudder. If you're just a boat bobbing in the middle of the ocean without steering, every single wave tosses you.
You're at the mercy of it all.
Exactly. Every gust of wind blows you off course. You're entirely at the mercy of the elements, lost at sea, and guaranteed to be smashed against the rocks by the first major storm.
But the moment you drop a rudder into the water
and set a course, a purpose, everything changes. Suddenly, you can use those exact same winds and those exact same waves to push you toward your destination.
the environment didn't change, your relationship to it did.
But what about the person listening right now who says, well, that all sounds amazing, but I don't have a grand life purpose. I don't know what my calling is. Are they just doomed to drift?
That is perhaps the most common barrier people face with this philosophy. And the text offers incredibly pragmatic, grounded advice for exactly that situation.
Oh, good. What is it?
If you aren't ready for a grand, overarching life purpose, if you haven't found your magnum opus yet, Alan says you must fix your thoughts upon the faultless performance of your daily duties, no matter how insignificant they may seem.
So, if your job is to sweep the floor, you sweep it like an artist.
Precisely. If your duty is to make a spreadsheet, you make it flawlessly.
Because the objective in that moment isn't actually the floor or the spreadsheet.
Right. The objective is the training of the mind. By demanding faultless performance from yourself in small, mundane tasks, you gather and focus your mental energy. You stop it from scattering.
You're basically building the mental muscle of concentration, discipline, and intentionality.
Exactly. Once that muscle is developed through small tasks, you possess the mental fortitude required to tackle larger, grander purposes when they eventually reveal themselves to you.
You are building the capacity for greatness in the dark.
That's a great way to put it.
It relieves so much pressure, honestly.
Yeah.
You don't need to write a symphony today. You just need to do today's chores with absolute focused excellence.
Yes.
But as we start to build that muscle, as we start to move toward a purpose, we are inevitably going to face friction.
Always.
The sources identify two massive universal enemies of purpose: doubt and fear.
They are the great disintegrators of human potential.
Disintegrators.
Yeah, the text notes that doubt and fear never accomplish anything. They lack the creative capacity to build. Their only function is to destroy.
They disintegrate the straight line of effort.
Exactly. When you have a purpose, your path is direct. But the moment you allow doubt to creep in, asking, can I really pull this off? Or fear asking, what will people say if I fail? Your mental energy splinters.
You're no longer driving forward. You're leaking energy in every direction.
The text is absolute on this dynamic. He who conquers doubt and fear conquers failure.
Because failure is rarely an external event. It's an internal capitulation to fear. The moment you surrender to the doubt, the outward failure becomes inevitable.
It really does.
This brings us to a crucial pivot in the philosophy. Having a purpose is vital, and focusing your thoughts is the mechanism. But achieving anything requires action, and most importantly, it requires sacrifice.
Yes, let's look at the price of achievement. This is where the philosophy separates from mere positive thinking.
Right, it's not just the secret.
Exactly. It's not just about holding happy thoughts and waiting for the universe to deliver a reward. It is about the rigid law of sacrifice.
The law of sacrifice.
All achievements, whether they are in the realm of business, intellectual discovery, or spiritual enlightenment, are the direct result of definitely directed thought. And a core tenet of this natural law is that the universe does not ultimately favor the greedy or the dishonest.
Now, I can hear people loudly disagreeing with that right now.
Oh, I'm sure.
Because we look at the world, we read the news, and we see greedy, dishonest, manipulative people achieving massive financial and social success every single day.
Yeah, it often looks like the universe heavily favors the ruthless.
It absolutely appears that way on the surface. How does the philosophy reconcile that?
Well, the philosophy does not deny the existence of corrupt wealth or ill-gotten power. However, it argues that such success is inherently temporary and fundamentally hollow.
Hollow how?
It is a structure built on a rotting foundation. Because the internal thoughts of the dishonest person are chaotic and fearful, they're constantly afraid of losing what they stole or being found out. Their external reality will eventually match that internal rot.
Ah, so it catches up to them.
Always. They will face ruin, whether it manifests as circumstantial collapse, physical disease, or profound mental anguish. Ultimately, the universe aids the honest and the virtuous because their internal foundation is solid.
But getting back to the mechanics of reaching any goal, it hinges entirely on this law of sacrifice.
It does. The rule is brutally, elegantly simple. He who would accomplish little must sacrifice little. He who would achieve much must sacrifice much.
So if you want a lot, you have to give up a lot.
Exactly. The text points out that a person whose first thought is bestial indulgence, meaning their primary drive is immediate gratification, physical comfort, overeating, laziness, cannot plan or act independently.
Because they're completely enslaved to their impulses.
Right. If your body commands you to sleep in and you obey, you cannot achieve the goal that requires you to wake up early.
The sources provide two striking, highly specific parables to illustrate this, don't they?
Yes, they do. First, consider the wealthy man who suffers from a painful, chronic disease that is entirely caused by his own gluttony and overindulgence.
Okay.
He has immense resources. He is willing to pay any sum of money to the best doctors in the world to regain his health. But he absolutely refuses to give up his rich, unnatural foods and his lavish lifestyle.
Yeah.
He wants the achievement of health, but he flatly refuses the sacrifice of his appetite.
So despite all his money, he remains sick.
Exactly. He believes health is a commodity he can buy, failing to realize it's a state of being he must earn through sacrifice.
And then there's the second example, which is kind of a mirror image.
Right. It's a poor man who desperately wants to improve his circumstances. He wants a better home, a better life for his family.
A noble goal.
Yes, but he constantly shirks his work. He does a sloppy job, he wastes his employer's time, and he actively deceives his boss because he feels he's underpaid and therefore justified in his laziness.
Oh, wow. So he wants the achievement of prosperity, but he refuses to sacrifice his lazy, dishonest thoughts.
He wants the reward without the labor.
Neither of these men can alter their reality because they refuse to sacrifice their lower, immediate desires for their higher ideals.
And we see this law of sacrifice at play in the lives of history's greatest figures, too.
Give me an example.
Think of intellectual giants like Albert Einstein or Marie Curie. Their monumental achievements in science weren't born from a desire for fame, wealth, or vanity.
Right.
They were the result of an intense, grueling sacrifice of personal time, physical comfort, and sometimes even their own health, driven by a pure, definitely directed thought toward truth.
They sacrifice the lower comforts for the higher intellectual ideal.
Exactly. Or look at spiritual achievements, figures like Mahatma Gandhi or Mother Teresa. They sacrificed almost every conceivable physical comfort, personal wealth, and worldly ambition for a noble, high-minded spiritual ideal.
And their massive world-altering influence wasn't an accident or a stroke of luck.
No, it was the exact mathematical result of their massive sacrifice. They traded their lower desires for the highest possible visions.
Which naturally brings us to the zenith of this mental evolution. When we sacrifice those lower desires, when we discipline our minds and dedicate our focused thought to a noble purpose, we begin to actually manifest the ultimate visions we hold in our hearts.
We move into the realm of the dreamers.
The text has a profound reverence for dreamers. It states flatly, "Dreamers are the saviors of the world."
It's a beautiful line.
It really is. It argues that humanity is literally nourished by the beautiful visions of its solitary dreamers, the composers, the sculptors, the painters, the prophets.
Because without them, without people holding a vision of something higher, the world would just perish in the mud of mundane labor.
They are the architects of the future. They hold a vision of what could be, and by holding on to that definitely directed thought with unwavering faith, they eventually force the physical world to match it.
They don't accept reality as it is. They impose their internal vision upon it.
There's a line from the text that perfectly captures this mechanism. The oak sleeps in the acorn, the bird waits in the egg.
That implies that the highest, grandest, most beautiful version of your life is already inside of you right now.
It's incubating.
Exactly. It's just waiting for the right conditions, the right sequence of disciplined thoughts to hatch.
There's a beautiful narrative in the sources about a poor youth that illustrates this entire journey perfectly. How does this young man apply this philosophy to escape his reality?
It's a powerful synthesis of everything we've discussed today. So, picture a youth, hard-pressed by poverty, laboring incredibly long hours in an unhealthy, grimy workshop.
Okay, grim circumstances.
Very grim. He has no formal education, no refinement, no influential friends, and no apparent way out. His external garment of circumstance is completely bleak.
But inside?
Inside, he holds a vision. He dreams of better things. He envisions intelligence, grace, and a wider liberty. And that vision takes complete possession of his mind.
So instead of squandering his meager spare time on indulgences or just complaining about his fate, What does he do?
He uses every spare mental cycle to develop his latent powers.
He focuses his mind. He doesn't fight the workshop. He outgrows it.
Exactly. And the text says that very soon his mind becomes so altered, so refined and expanded by his vision, that the grimy workshop can literally no longer hold him.
No.
It falls out of his life like a cast-aside garment. His internal reality has grown so large that his external circumstances are forced to expand to accommodate him.
And years later,
We see this same youth as a full-grown man, wielding massive influence, holding gigantic responsibilities, and changing lives with his words.
he became the master of his fate because he held true to the vision in his heart while he was still sweeping floors in the dark.
It's the ultimate proof that you are not stuck. You are never stuck.
You're only incubating.
Exactly. But achieving these massive worldly or spiritual visions isn't actually the final end state of Alan's philosophy.
It's not.
No. The final lesson, the ultimate peak of this mental mountain, is something much quieter. It is serenity.
Serenity.
Yes. The text calls calmness of mind one of the beautiful jewels of wisdom. It's not a state of apathy or laziness.
Right. It's not just giving up.
Far from it. It's the result of long, patient, arduous effort in self-control. This profound, unshakable calmness comes from the deep understanding of oneself as a thought-evolved being.
When you truly understand the mechanics, when you know that you cause your own reality through your thoughts, there's just nothing left to panic about.
The mystery's gone. You know how the machine works.
The serene person ceases to fuss, fume, worry, or grieve about the external world. They understand the internal relations of things by the rigid action of cause and effect.
And because they've learned how to perfectly govern their own internal state, they know how to adapt to others.
And interestingly, the text notes that humanity inherently reveres this spiritual strength.
We do. We are naturally drawn to the strong, calm person. They become like a shade-giving tree in a thirsty land or a sheltering rock in a storm.
People want to be near that level of internal mastery,
They absolutely do.
which leads to the final, ultimate command of the text regarding the power of self-control. It reads, "Self-control is strength. Right thought is mastery. Calmness is power. Say unto your heart, peace, be still."
Peace, be still. It is a conscious command you issue to your own mind, taking back the throne of your consciousness from the noise and the fear.
We have covered massive ground today. We started by realizing that we are not victims of our circumstances, but the master weavers of our character in our environment.
We learn that the mind is a garden. It will grow weeds of chaos if we don't intentionally plant the seeds of our purpose.
We confronted the harsh truth that the universe doesn't give us what we want. It gives us what we are.
We explored the biological reality of our thoughts, how fear and anxiety physically break down our bodies, while joy and serenity act as a biological shield.
We learned to drop a rudder into the water to stop drifting, anchoring ourselves to a purpose, even if that means just executing today's mundane duties with absolute perfection to build that mental muscle.
We faced the law of sacrifice, understanding that to achieve anything of value, we must sacrifice our lower instant gratification desires.
And finally, we learned to hold tightly to our highest visions, knowing the oak sleeps in the acorn, until we reach that ultimate jewel of wisdom, serenity.
It really is a complete mechanical blueprint for self-transformation. And the most empowering part is that the entire process begins and ends with the very next thought you choose to entertain.
So to you listening to this right now, remember that your current environment, no matter how stressful, stagnant, or painful it might feel, is not your final destination.
It is merely the current pattern in the kaleidoscope.
You have the absolute power to twist the lens and alter your reality by altering your thoughts today.
The loom is yours to operate.
Which brings us back to where we started, to that silent echo in your head. I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over on your own.
Let's hear it.
Imagine that every single aspect of your life right now, your bank account, your health, your relationships, your stress levels, is the exact physical manifestation of the secret thoughts you've been cultivating for the past 5 years. If that is true, what does the current state of the garden of your life tell you about the seeds you've been planting? And more importantly, what seed will you choose to plant the moment this deep dive ends?